She sold our parents' house before the grass even grew over their graves. 1 week after the funeral, I drove by the home I grew up in, and there it was, a bright red for sale sign stabbed into the yard like a blade straight through my chest. When I called my sister, she didn't even pretend to be sorry. "It's better this way," she said coldly. "You wouldn't know what to do with money anyway." That's when I realized she wasn't just grieving, she was calculating. The same woman who used to braid my hair when we were kids had become a stranger wearing my sister's face. She sold everything. The house, the car, even Dad's old watch collection. Then she transferred the entire inheritance, every cent, into her own account. And when I confronted her, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Move on, Mark. You'll thank me one day." But the day I thanked her would come in a courtroom. Because karma wasn't asleep, it was quietly watching, waiting, and when it finally woke up, it came for her hard. And I was the one who made sure it did. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted and dreamed of seeing karma finally hit back, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, tap like, and share this video with someone who needs to know that justice still exists. Because today, I'm going to tell you how my greedy sister stole my inheritance and how I made sure every dollar came back with interest. Let's begin. When my parents passed, I wasn't ready for how fast grief could turn into paperwork. Lawyers, wills, bank accounts, probate court. It all blurred together in a haze of funeral flowers and sympathy cards. My sister, Laura, was the organized one, the favorite, the golden child, who always knew what to say, how to smile, how to make everyone believe she had everything under control. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one who took things slow, the one who fixed Mom's old radio instead of networking at her memorial. So, naturally, when the will was read, my parents had appointed her as executor. She was the one meant to handle all the finances, divide everything fairly. At least, that's what she was supposed to do. I still remember the day we sat in Dad's study, the scent of his pipe tobacco still hanging in the air. The lawyer slid the papers across the table and said, "Your parents' assets are to be split evenly, 50-50. Laura smiled that polite, measured smile of hers and said, "Of course." But I noticed something. A flicker in her eyes, just a flash when she looked down at those papers. It wasn't grief, it was calculation. At the time, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe she'd do the right thing. I wanted to believe blood still meant something. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 months later, every account my parents owned had been liquidated. The house sold, the furniture gone, even the safe in Dad's office, empty. When I asked her what happened, she laughed softly through the phone and said, "Oh, Mark, it's all being managed. Don't worry about it. You'll get your share once everything's sorted." Weeks turned into months. Then one night, I got an alert from our family's joint investment account, the one we were supposed to access after the estate settled. Balance, $0.00. Account closed. That was when I knew. She'd taken it all, every single cent. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do. At least not yet, because she'd done it smart. She made it look legitimate. She forged small authorizations, claimed executor authority, created fake transfer notes. She even sent me doctored statements to make it seem like the funds were still there. It was betrayal so clean it almost looked legal. I tried to confront her in person once, but when I showed up at her place, she refused to open the door. "Mark," she said through the intercom, "you're embarrassing yourself. This isn't your money. You never cared about them like I did." That sentence broke something in me. Because it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect. About the audacity of her rewriting our parents' legacy to make herself the victim. That night I sat in my car outside her gate, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands shook. "I'll move on," I whispered to myself, "but not the way you think." Grief turns into anger in strange ways. For me, it came in quiet waves. Sleepless nights, half-finished letters, bank statements spread across my kitchen table at 3 a.m. I'd read them over and over until the numbers blurred. My friends told me to let it go. But how do you let go when your parents' entire lives, their savings, their dreams, their home, are sitting in your sister's account, being used to fund her spa weekends and designer handbags? It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease with which she did it. The laughter in her voice when she called me dramatic. The way she posted photos online of her new chapter, smiling in front of the house she bought with our inheritance. Each picture felt like a taunt. Her hand resting on the marble countertop, the caption, "Hard work pays off." I could practically hear her voice behind every post, smug, dismissive, untouchable. I started gathering documents, emails, copies of old bank transfers, the will. I even tracked down our parents' financial advisor, an old man named Richard who had known my dad for decades. When I told him what happened, his face fell. "She can't legally move everything without your co-signature," he said slowly. "Not unless she's got power of attorney, which should have ended the moment your father passed." My pulse quickened. "So she broke the law?" He hesitated. "If what you're saying is true, then yes, but you'll need proof, solid proof." Proof. That word stuck with me. For weeks, I lived two lives. By day, I went to work, silent, polite, pretending to function. By night, I became an investigator. I went through old files, traced transactions, even checked property records. And that's when I found it. A single paper trail she hadn't covered up. She'd transferred $60,000 from the estate's account into a personal investment fund under her own name. That was my spark. But when I brought it to a lawyer, he gave me the look I'd been dreading. Yes, it's suspicious, but she's the executor. She can claim administrative necessity unless we can prove intent to defraud. Intent. Another word that haunted me. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was obsessed. Maybe I was just angry and lonely. Maybe she was right. Maybe she deserved it more than me. Then one evening, I got a call from one of Dad's old friends, a retired accountant who'd helped my parents set up their trust years ago. He told me, "Your sister's been liquidating more than just the house. She's selling their old business shares too, without declaration." That night, I sat in the dark, the documents scattered across the floor, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo. It hit me, this wasn't incompetence. It was theft, deliberate and cruel. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. If she could forge signatures and falsify transfers, she could forge documents in my name too. She wasn't just stealing money, she was erasing me from the story. That thought, that unbearable thought, broke the last piece of me that still believed in mercy. I called a forensic accountant the next morning. A quiet, meticulous man named Elliot. He didn't talk much, but his eyes told me he'd seen everything, every lie people hide behind numbers. When I told him what I suspected, he said simply, "Let me dig, but don't contact her again. She'll cover her tracks the moment she senses movement." So I waited. 2 months passed. 2 agonizing, crawling months where I heard nothing. Then, one rainy Tuesday, my phone rang. Elliot's voice was calm, but electric. "Mark, you need to come to my office, now." When I got there, he slid a folder across the desk. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, transaction histories, all cross-referenced and marked in red. He said, "She moved everything into a shell company under her name. But here's where it gets interesting. That company filed taxes last year, And if what I'm seeing is right, she didn't declare most of her gains. She's sitting on undeclared income worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I stared at the numbers, barely breathing. It was like seeing a map of her greed drawn in blood. And that's when the idea came to me, a small, wicked thought at first. What if I didn't confront her this time? What if I let someone else do it? I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, out of focus. For the first time in a year, my mind was razor sharp. Every bit of grief, every ounce of humiliation, every sleepless night was finally aligning into something cold and deliberate. Laura thought she'd beaten me because she believed I was passive, quiet, harmless. But I learned something about silence. It's not weakness, it's strategy. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, spread Elliot's folder across my dining table, and began sketching a plan. If I confronted her, she'd bury the evidence. She'd cry, manipulate, gaslight, and walk away untouchable. But if I stayed quiet, if I played the same game she did, I could make her undo herself. Elliot helped me prepare a formal report, unreported income, asset misappropriation, trust violations, and fraudulent transfer activities. It read like a confession she'd written with her own hands. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Elliot asked as we sealed the envelope. "It'll destroy her." I looked him in the eye and said, "She destroyed us first." We filed an anonymous tip with the tax authority and the probate oversight board. I made sure every document traced back cleanly to her. Her name, her accounts, her company. Then I waited. The weeks that followed were quiet, unnervingly so. Laura kept posting on social media, brunches, shopping, yoga retreats. It almost felt unreal, like she was dancing on a cliff's edge with no idea the ground beneath her was cracking. I started to notice subtle changes. Calls from unknown numbers on her posts, shorter captions, a few pictures quietly deleted. Then came the phone call I'd been waiting for. It was Laura. Her voice was unusually sharp, almost brittle. "Mark, did you talk to anyone about the estate? Any banks? Lawyers?" I leaned back, forcing calm into my tone. "No. Why?" She hesitated. "Nothing, just weird stuff going on. Some documents being requested. Probably random." I could almost hear her pacing, the sound of nervous energy replacing her usual arrogance. That was the first crack. 2 days later, she called again, this time angry. "Did you file something? They're asking for audits, old receipts, even property evaluations. This is insane." I kept my voice steady. "Laura, you're the executor. Isn't that your responsibility?" Silence. Then, "Don't play dumb with me, Mark. I know you're behind this." I let a small pause stretch. "Behind what exactly?" She hung up. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Because now she was panicking, and panic makes people sloppy. Over the next month, the investigation deepened. The auditors began tracing her accounts, finding discrepancies she couldn't explain. Every management fee she'd paid herself, every loan that conveniently landed in her personal bank account. I didn't even have to push. She was unraveling on her own. But I wasn't done. While the audit was underway, I quietly contacted the estate court. I filed a petition to review her executor actions, legally as an heir. I included copies of Elliot's findings, all cross-referenced. When the court subpoenaed her records, she tried to claim everything was authorized. But the signatures? The authorization letters? They were forged, poorly. The forensic analysts confirmed it. Every document she'd used to move the money had been digitally altered. That's when the dominoes started to fall. Her bank froze her accounts, her shell company was suspended pending review, and the government's audit department officially opened a fraud case under her name. I didn't gloat, not yet. I watched quietly as she panicked, trying to explain to everyone, friends, her husband, her lawyer, that it was all a misunderstanding. The irony was delicious. The same confidence she used to steal from me was now the rope tightening around her neck. A week later, she called again. This time her voice wasn't sharp, it was broken. "Mark, They're saying I could lose everything. They're freezing my accounts. I didn't mean for it to get this bad." For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "Laura, I told you to move on." "I did." There was a long silence, then a quiet sob. "Please, help me." I closed my eyes, remembering the day she told me I'd thank her one day. I guess that day had finally come. Just not the way she imagined. The day everything came crashing down started out deceptively calm. A pale morning light streamed through my window, and for once, the world didn't feel so heavy. I brewed coffee, checked my phone, and saw a single notification that made my breath catch. State audit results. Executor review hearing scheduled. It was happening. When I arrived at the courthouse, I didn't go inside immediately. I sat in my car, hands clasped on the steering wheel, watching the building's stone facade. My chest was tight, not from fear, but from the weight of finality. Inside, Laura was already there. She looked smaller somehow. The tailored confidence was gone. Her hair was pulled back too tight, her smile brittle, and her designer handbag clutched like armor. Her attorney, a young man in a navy suit, whispered something to her. She avoided looking at me. When the clerk called our case, we stepped forward. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, began reading the summary. Executor Laura Bennett is under review for suspected misappropriation of estate funds, tax evasion, and fraudulent transfer of property assets belonging to Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. Every word echoed in the room. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay expressionless. Her lawyer immediately objected, calling it a family misunderstanding. He said she had full authorization and acted within her rights as executor. That's when the forensic accountant, Elliot, stepped forward with his briefcase. "Your Honor," he said, voice calm and measured, "these are the digital copies of the documents in question. Each one contains metadata showing alteration after the date of Mr. Bennett's passing, specifically by the device registered to Miss Laura Bennett." He handed them over. The judge scanned the papers, her expression tightening with each page. "Miss Bennett," she said, "do you have an explanation for this?" Laura's voice trembled. I only moved the funds temporarily for safekeeping." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Into your personal account." Laura hesitated. "It was easier to manage that way." That was it, the exact sentence that sealed her fate. The courtroom fell silent except for the judge's pen scratching across her notes. The verdict didn't come immediately. It took weeks, but when the letter arrived, it was everything I'd hoped for and more. Laura was found guilty of breach of fiduciary duty and fraudulent handling of estate assets. She was ordered to repay the full amount, plus interest and penalties. The total was staggering, more than she had left. Her accounts were liquidated, her car repossessed, the house she'd bought with our parents' money, listed for sale by the bank. When the judgment was final, I received a transfer notification. Half of the estate value restored to me. For the first time in years, my name was back where it belonged. But justice didn't end there. The tax authority pursued her separately for unreported income. That audit, the one triggered by our anonymous tip, exposed even more hidden accounts. The government froze them all. Laura's social media vanished overnight. Friends who once praised her success quietly disappeared. Her husband filed for separation 2 months later. The woman who once told me to move on was now a ghost, stripped of the wealth she built on lies. And me, I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything. I just drove past the house she once flaunted online. Now empty, the blinds drawn, the gate chained shut. For a moment, I felt an ache deep in my chest. Not pity exactly, more like closure. My parents had always believed in fairness. They used to say, "What you build on lies won't stand long." They were right. I parked outside, rolled down the window, and whispered to the wind, "Mom, Dad, it's done." That night, I slept without waking up once. When justice finally lands, it doesn't sound like thunder. It's quiet. It's the silence that comes when you realize no one's chasing you anymore. No more late-night calls, no more anxiety waiting for the next lie to unravel. Just calm. The day the final payment hit my account, I stared at the number on my screen for a long time. It should have felt triumphant. It should have felt like victory. But instead, it felt heavy. That number represented everything we'd lost, not just money, but trust, family, the simple warmth of being able to call your sister without feeling a knife twist in your gut. Still, I couldn't deny the satisfaction. She'd mocked me for being naive. She'd built her little empire on greed and arrogance. And now she had to watch it crumble, piece by piece, every stone falling in slow motion. Her lawyer sent me a formal apology letter, clearly written under pressure. Then, weeks later, Laura herself reached out. The message was short. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand why I did what I did. I stared at those words for a long time. I typed a dozen replies, angry, bitter, cruel, and deleted each one. In the end, I just wrote back, I already do. You wanted control. But what you didn't understand is that control isn't ownership. It's responsibility. She never responded. Word spread quietly through our extended family. Some called me a hero, others whispered that I'd gone too far. But I didn't care about their opinions. They hadn't sat up at night wondering if they'd ever see justice. They hadn't watched a lifetime of memories get auctioned off to strangers. One of my father's old friends, Mr. Clarkson, called me after the verdict. His voice cracked as he said, "Your dad would have been proud of you, son. You stood your ground the right way." And that was the moment I realized the revenge wasn't just about getting money back. It was about reclaiming dignity. I used part of the settlement to repair Dad's old workshop, the one Laura had sold off in pieces. I tracked down some of his tools, bought them back, even found his favorite radio at an antique store. When I turned it on, it still worked, a soft hum of static, giving way to a familiar old tune. It felt like home again. I didn't rebuild everything. I didn't have to. Justice doesn't erase what's broken. It just stops the breaking. Sometimes I still see her name pop up in old memories. Birthdays, family photos, holidays before the storm. And for a moment, I almost wish things had been different. Almost. But then I remember her words. Move on. And I realize I finally did. Just not the way she wanted. I moved on from being powerless, from being underestimated, from being silent. Now, whenever someone tells me karma takes too long, I smile and tell them this story. Because karma doesn't rush. It studies. It waits for the moment you least expect. And when it hits, it doesn't miss. It's strange. Revenge doesn't end with fireworks. It ends quietly, like the last note of a song fading into the distance. For a long time, I thought getting the money back would fill the hole Laura left. It didn't. It just made the silence louder. But over time, that silence turned into something else. Peace. Peace from knowing I didn't stoop to her level. Peace from proving that patience, not rage, delivers the deepest justice. I rebuilt my parents' legacy the way they would have wanted. Not through wealth, but through integrity. I donated part of the inheritance to the local hospice that cared for Mom in her final days. I funded scholarships in my parents' names. Small gestures, but each one felt like stitching a wound that had bled for too long. And with each act, the bitterness faded just a little more. I learned that revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration, restoring truth, dignity, and balance. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't seeing them fall. It's seeing yourself rise. Months later, I got one last letter from Laura. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even signed. Just one line written in her careful handwriting. I finally understand what you meant about responsibility. I folded it neatly, placed it in Dad's old toolbox, and closed the lid. That was the last time I ever heard from her. Life moved on, but not in the way she once demanded. It moved forward, steady, honest, clean. Now, whenever I drive past the place that used to be our family home, I don't feel pain anymore. I feel gratitude. Because if Laura hadn't betrayed me, I might never have found out what I was truly capable of. Patience, persistence, and justice without cruelty. Mom used to say, trust is like glass. Once it breaks, you can piece it back together, but it'll never be the same. She was right. But sometimes broken glass catches the light in ways whole glass never could. So if you're listening to this and someone has wronged you, remember this. You don't have to destroy them to win. You just have to outlast them. Let karma work through truth, not hate. Because eventually, the lies collapse. And when they do, you'll be standing exactly where you were meant to be. If you've ever been betrayed and dreamed of justice, I want to hear your story. What would you have done if your own sibling stole everything? Would you forgive them or let the universe take its course? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if you believe in poetic justice as much as I do, hit that subscribe button, tap like, and share this story with someone who needs to remember karma doesn't forget. It just takes its time. Until next time, this is Mark signing off. Stay patient, stay sharp, and never underestimate quiet revenge.